But we find out Mitch Trubisky signing a 2-year deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Quarterback of the future, what say you, Ike Taylor?
Man, it's kind of head-scratching. What I've seen with Mitchell Trubisky and what he did with a good defense with the Chicago Bears, it was okay. They say sometimes a change of venue is good for a person's soul and hit the reset button, but we also have a good defense. But time will tell with Mitchell Trubisky. I think Mitchell Trubisky is exactly who he is. He's an 8-8 quarterback, my personal opinion, regardless of whether you put some good receivers around him, regardless of whether you put a good defense around him with a hell of a running back and Najee. That's just me, my personal opinion. Just because you win the first round don't mean you're going to play like a first round, quarterback. It's not his fault that he went first round. But at the same time, I'm not trying to knock Mitchell Trubisky. I'm just saying the two guys between Mason and Dwayne, I'd rather let them just fight it out and draft the guy between Pickett or Malik Willis. But I guess Pittsburgh thinking, man, they don't have an opportunity or won't have an opportunity to trade up or get one of these two guys between Pickett and Malik Willis. So you got to get what's the best other option, and that was Mitchell Trubisky. So time will tell. I thought it was an okay move. I didn't like the move at all, Mark. I think I've seen enough of Mitchell Trubisky. I think Mitchell Trubisky is not to knock anybody like a Nick Foles. Just a guy who can 8-8. He can win you some games. Now, if you want to talk about an upgrade as far as like being mobile, he definitely is mobile. I think we talked about Mitch Trubisky last week when Josh Allen gave him a heck of a compliment and said, he's highly underrated. I don't think people understand, how good Mitch Trubisky is. I do understand because I saw enough tape on him to understand what he was. I thought Josh Allen was being a heck of a teammate and giving his guy compliments. So time will tell, but that's just where I'm at. If you look at that division, if you look at just that quarterback locker room for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I don't know if you want to say that's a huge upgrade, especially when you got to play Baker, Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson when he comes back. So we shall see, but I definitely didn't like that at all. I definitely didn't like this 2-year deal.
Yeah, Ike, we actually have breaking news here on the show, too. J.C. Jackson's getting a 5-year deal with the Los Angeles Chargers. So more upgrades on the Chargers defense. We're going to talk a little bit about their signing of Khalil Mack a little bit later in today's show, but breaking news here, which we don't always have on Bleav in Steelers, but had to make mention of that. Now, going back to Trubisky, Ike, the case for him would be this. He's a mobile quarterback. He can move around. I'm not sure he was quite utilized in the right way in Chicago because remember, when he was the second overall pick of the 2017 draft, who was the Chicago Bears head coach? Oh, yeah, John Fox. It wasn't Matt Nagy, who has since been fired. He was never Matt Nagy's guy in Chicago. And the case for him would be, well, Trubisky led the Bears to 2 playoff appearances in a 3-season span. So that would be the case for him. He does have some nice mobility, but what he struggles with, Ike, is his ability to read progressions and his ability to pass the ball down the field. And that's where I think he will continue to struggle. We'll see how much he learned in what was almost like, a graduate level course in this past year with the Buffalo Bills, sitting under Josh Allen, learning from Brian Daboll. We'll see what he learned, but I really think this signals that the Steelers are not going to draft a quarterback with the 20th overall pick. And they probably figured by the time they select at number 20 overall, Kenny Pickett and Malik Willis aren't going to be there. So probably from the Steelers standpoint, they figure, let's see what we've got in Mason Rudolph, Dwayne Haskins, and now Mitchell Trubisky, who Trubisky I expect to be the opening day starter to start the 2022 season with this signing. I expect him to be the starter, and I know it's going to be a quarterback competition, but the Steelers probably figured by the time they would pick at number 20, the guy that they would need to select who could be Big Ben Roethlisberger's heir wasn't going to be there. So between those three guys, Trubisky, Rudolph, and Haskins, one of them is going to get the opportunity to start and make a name for themselves. But I had to make the case for Trubisky in terms of what the Steelers' thought process was in signing him to a 2-year deal.
Yeah, what's the difference between him and Mason Rudolph?
I think Trubisky's much more mobile than Rudolph is, Ike. But that to answer your question. But I hear what you're saying.
So I'm not going to disagree with the mobility part, but at the same time, I think at one point in time when Khalil Mack was with Chicago, when he was healthy, Chicago had a better defense overall than the Pittsburgh Steelers. They created more turnovers than the Pittsburgh Steelers. Their running game at the time was better than the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, when you want to talk about a wide receiver core, I think the wide receiver core for the Pittsburgh Steelers trumped the Chicago Bears wide receiver core. But at the same time, man, don't get it twisted. That defense won't give it nothing but 13.7 to 14 points, at the time when it was in a headache with Mitch Trubisky as being a starter. And what everybody kept saying, man, we just can't get over that hump on scoring points on the offensive side. And this was at a time where they were scoring a lot of points on the defensive side for Chicago. So years have went by. I think that was 3 or 4 years ago. Time will tell. Yep. He was with the Buffalo Bills. So we'll see if he matured as far as like being a quarterback, especially throwing it downfield. But I don't know, Mark. It's hard playing quarterback in the NFL. Usually what you are is what you are, especially if you have enough tape. But as far as like the mobility part, yes, he's an upgrade mobile-wise when it comes down to Pittsburgh Steelers and what they had last year. Yes, he's a little bit more mobile than Mason Rudolph. Yes, he's a little bit more mobile than Dwayne Haskins, but we shall see is what I'm saying. I thought it was an okay acquiring from the free agency standpoint for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It didn't tickle my Twitter, so say.
And Ike, you're talking about that 2018 season when Trubisky actually made the Pro Bowl, believe it or not, as maligned as he's been as a quarterback in this league. But it's also, what have you done for me since then? And he actually got benched by Matt Nagy in the 2020 season for not living up to being that second overall pick. And remember, the Bears traded assets to move up to be able to draft Trubisky. It's the same draft that Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson got drafted in as well, Ike. But you're talking about that 2018 season, the infamous double doink game where kicker Cody Parkey hits it not once off the upright, but twice, and they lose in the playoffs to the Philadelphia Eagles. That was really the best football we saw out of Mitchell Trubisky in the 2018 season and what was his second year in the league. And again, it's been several years since then. And what have you done for me lately? Served as Buffalo's backup this past season. I'm also curious to see what the details of the contract wind up being in Pittsburgh, because I'll say this. I mean, if it brings out the best in Rudolph, Haskins, and Trubisky, maybe you can get a quarterback of the future on the cheat. I just don't see it with any of the three of them. I think this is more of a stopgap, Ike, to figure out, okay, what are the Steelers going to potentially do next offseason, or whether it's a trade, whether it's through the draft, whether it's through free agency. I think the Steelers just looked at overall, okay, Russell Wilson goes to Denver, Aaron Rodgers is staying put in Green Bay. Who else is available from a free agent standpoint? And they decided to go with Trubisky, considering, again, we really like Kenny Pickett. We really like Malik Willis in the 2022 draft, Ike. But by the time the Steelers pick at number 20 overall, I would be shocked if either of those players are there.
Agreed.